Okay, everyone. First off, happy Easter. Everyone has a right to be unsettled in this issue. First and foremost, the family of Mr. Blue. They've had a tragic situation take their life, and they are faced with having it being covered up by a whole lot of other conversations. That's the same type of frustration that happened in Missouri. It's a tragic death of a loved one covered up by a myriad of other conversations. And that leads to a degree of frustration, a frustration that shouldn't be. Anytime you lose a loved one, you should be allowed the space and time to mourn properly, because they produced a law-abiding young man who believed in family, hard work. They did their job. That family did what they were supposed to do. He was a law-abiding young man who believed in hard work and believed in family and preparing to get married. So the Blue family, first and foremost, should be outraged in this conversation, because their mourning is being interrupted by several other conversations. They're not having a happy Easter. Some people say we shouldn't have a press conference on Easter Sunday. The Blue family isn't having a happy Easter today. Secondly, to the criminals, this activity must stop. Because also what's being covered up in this conversation is that the criminals who stole the items should stop when the police officers turn the lights on. Now, I disagree with some of the high-speed chases and practices of some police departments, but in the nexus of it, you have criminals who don't abide by the law, either in stealing items, also when the law enforcement officers are there to apprehend. Secondly, Jacksonians should be a little unsettled as well, because this police chase went through Highway 80, South Drive, West Haven, Robinson Road, Dixon Road, Swanee, Redwood, Mount Vernon, Thomas Ketchens Drive, Alabama Street, Denver Street, Claiborne Avenue, Lattimore Avenue, Houston, and then back to Calvin Street. Some people ask, why am I in this conversation? Because the bulk of these streets that you named are Ward 4. You don't get from Clinton to Jackson without going through Ward 4. Whether it be Raven Road or Highway 80 or Clinton Boulevard, it's through the heart of my ward that this activity took place. And if I don't speak up now, I'll be derelict in my job of representation of the people I'm called to serve. So lastly, the metro area should be unsettled, because we have so much promise as a metro area that we should be rising above these police chase and airport conversations and doing business all over the world. We should be doing business with other countries, propelling Mississippi into the forefront. But we're in the gutter with these divisive conversations, anchored by our history of pain and oppression. And we're reaching back and holding on to that anchor and holding the state's progress back at the same time. Mississippi will never progress to the degree it should until we get beyond our history and culture of pain and oppression. If Alabama can come together and figure out how to produce a Birmingham, if Tennessee can come together and figure out how to produce a Memphis and a Nashville and a Chattanooga, if Louisiana can come together and figure out how to produce a New Orleans, cities who have global prominence, Mississippi can come together, because we're better. Mississippians are better than all those other folks that I just mentioned. We have what it takes to do these things, but we're still holding on to our anchors of pain and oppression. We're holding on to things that are definitely holding us back. So that's my response to this whole situation. Now, to the residents of Clinton, they definitely have reason to be in unrest. But more specifically, because the majority of the police officers on duty left their city chasing a shoplifter. They were abandoned by their police department. I would be in unrest if Lee Vance allowed that to happen in my city as well. If Lee Vance allowed for a situation where the majority of the police officers on duty at night abandon the city to chase a shoplifter into another city, I would be in unrest. I would be in unrest also if that led to the death of a young man or anybody. I would also be in unrest if my tax dollars were going to be used to in support of this activity. If those police officers had gotten in accidents, now they'd have been harmed and possibly even killed as a result to a misdemeanor and a property crime. Those police officers, several of them don't agree with the activity. They're just following the orders. My issue is there's a problem with the practice. There are other ways to do this. They can use the media as we have here today. Issue the pictures. These people were found stealing a computer in Walmart. If anybody knows anything, come get your reward of $500. That's used by common sense, sensible police practices. And there are other ways to do this. They should also understand that we're all in this together. The metro area must rise above these lower level conversations to become what brings Mississippi forward. Mississippi will never go forward until the central district comes together and rises above our lower level conditions. So that's my response to that. I mean, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them.
Councilman, how do you think we come to a place where we can have logical discussions on this, where we can find a way to meet in the middle?
Well, we have to, again, let go of some of our anchors of our issue and take a deep breath and actually communicate. Just sit down and say, okay, we must move forward. We must move into the global marketplace. We must start with the things we agree on. And we agree on several issues. You may see the mayor of the city of Clinton and myself together in a couple of weeks on another issue that we agree on. It's just this issue we don't agree on.
At this point, is there anything scheduled as far as trying to get together with some of the other cities in the metro area to talk about what some possible better practices would be?
As a city, we've tried to make overtures to those types of attempts, and I'm open to it at all times. Because we must rise above these lower level practices. Because I would be in an uproar if the majority of the city of Jackson Police Department left the city and went somewhere else chasing a misdemeanor.
Councilman, we are here because you basically want to kind of clarify some of your statements that you made in correlation to Ferguson. Can you clarify those statements and exactly what you meant?
Well, as I spoke about in the beginning here, the overlooking of people's pain. The family is in mourning right now, and that conversation is being overshadowed by a lot of other conversations. And that pain, when you allow it to fester, it creates a frustration inside of the family, then inside that circle of influence, and then inside the community, and then that leads to, it starts the snowball going down the road that no one's looking out for my pain. No one is answering to my pain, and that's what causes that snowball effect to happen, and that pain and frustration to grow. So, and that's what we must be doing.
Mr. Stamps, back to the chases. You're talking about how there should be 120-mile-an-hour chases in Clinton or Jackson. But what about, say, over in Ridgeland, Sound County, where you have a mall and you have a Walmart? The suspects can literally run 50 to 100 yards and get into Jackson. Suppose there's a no-chase policy. How are the police over there supposed to apprehend them if they really can't outrun the radios over there?
Well,
They get in the neighborhood and just get lost.
Well, I don't want Jackson to be a safe haven for criminals either. You know, those criminals, if they run, that's what I was talking in the beginning about them running and evading police officers. They're the nexus of this. When you see the blue lights come on, you got a hot laptop and you're passionate, so you might as well stop because you're endangering your life and the lives of other people at the same time. This went from a shoplifting to a murder charge. You see? So now even the criminal's activity has led to exasperating the situation for him and his family. Not to mention, not to disregard the fact that someone has lost their life in the same conversation. So on the criminal side, just stop. If the lights come on, just stop.
But what about when you say, like I said, go over to Ridgeland and they can literally just hop, skip, and jump, and they're all of a sudden, if there's a no chase policy, they don't have to worry about getting caught.
No, it's not
Or
about,
let's just say the odds are very much reduced.
it's not about a no chase policy, it's about how you chase. It's about how you pursue. That's my conversation, about how you pursue. And there are different ways to pursue. You can use the surveillance equipment, you can take an unmarked car and just follow the car slowly. You can call the tag number ahead and have some other agencies coordinate to bring some resolve to the situation. There's several other ways to do chase versus high-speed chase inside of condensed areas.
Do y'all see a distinction when you're looking at a situation where the police have tried to apprehend the suspect and he tries to hit them with the vehicle? Do you think that, I mean, obviously that's the emotional content of the chase, but do you feel like that has any leeway there?
Well, there are things that happen in a split second where police officers have to make split-second decisions that are split hairs by videotapes and things, and people like us for a long time. So the police officer on the ground needs to have the discretion to use different methods and practices, but we must use some common sense practices. But
To go back to what you were saying right before that about the alternatives to police chases, one of the impressions that I get is that there hasn't been a whole lot of conversation about what those alternatives are. And the fact that this is a huge national policing issue with police departments changing their policies left and right. And I know that the Jackson Police Department kind of changed its policy within the last decade to kind of limit the number of police pursuits that it does. So so my question is, are you aware of any conversations that are going on kind of throughout the metro about those kinds of police practices? And what's encouraging about that? What are specific ideas? And if not, what can we do to make that happen?
Donna, the president issued some guidelines for 21st century policing. And we are looking through those suggestions that came from a roundtable discussion of police chiefs from around the country that was issued by the White House. And we're already seeing how we can make our practices better. Because I'm not saying that JPD does not need some help and some practices and some ways to get better. So we're doing that, and we're looking for ways that the region can do that as well.
Now, have you gotten, if I can follow up, do you get a sense that other police departments are trying to come to the table? Because sometimes, there's a disconnect between what the brass are talking about and what's actually happening on the ground.
Well, if you watch even the chase, the video that was posted, even some of the police officers question the practice from a personal standpoint. So we just have to work better as leaders to change policies to make them more effective and allow the on-the-ground officers to make the call.
Councilman, I just want to go back, because perhaps I've missed it at the beginning. I just want to go back to what is it that you're trying to clarify? I'm still not clear.
Okay. For those who came late, my first comment was the frustration that led to the issue in Ferguson, Missouri. Part of it was you have a family and community in mourning, and that conversation or that pain gets overshadowed all these other conversations, and then that pain leads to frustration because you have people screaming, "What about my pain?" Because if it was my sister over, I wouldn't be wanting to hear about police chases and cities and all these other people. I would be thinking about the loss of my sister or my father or my nephew or so forth. So that pain starts to improve, and it creates a frustration that leads to things exasperating, people acting out. And so that's my beginning comments were about the link to the Ferguson issue, is that pain that they felt in Ferguson got overshadowed by the local and national and global attention, and people were still screaming, "What about my pain?"
I had an opportunity to speak with some family members, and they are basically saying the same thing, that the press conference that you guys had on Friday was nothing more than a publicity stunt.
Well, I was invited to the press conference. This is my press conference. And I was in no way trying to disregard the pain of the family and of the community. Hopefully we can get some resolve to this issue so that other families won't endure the same thing. Ross?
Have you gotten the impression that there was an upswell of people who want to take on that aggression and that type of brutality that was going on in Ferguson? You've heard in your constituency that this is something that they're thinking of.
Well, police tactics and those who are on the other end, sometimes they're criminals, sometimes they're law-abiding citizens who get in situations with police where police officers use excessive force in their duties. And there's a frustration that's already there. There's a frustration about police officers and tactics and the use of force that's being felt all over. There are things happening in the police community that the news never hears about. There are people who get mistreated every day that the news never covers because it's not in the area where the news will cover.
What put Ferguson on your mind with this? Was there a potential for any type of rising, or potential that was there anybody that contacted you and said this was going to happen?
No, I haven't gotten contacted by someone that has been professing a riot or anything like that. But I see frustration, first of a family and the community that's saying, what about my pain? And this has happened several times in several of these high-speed police chases over the course of the years. There are people in Jackson who don't even go to several areas because of the police practices. I mean, I drive a little small Corolla with tinted windows and I get pulled over a lot. So I understand and have personally felt that same thing.
But are you encouraging people to demonstrate? Are you encouraging them to do whatever they want to do to combat what's going on?
The first thing I'm encouraging here is that if you are a criminal and you are stealing something, and the blue lights come on, I'm encouraging you to stop because you're harming your life, your security, and your livelihood in that pursuit. Secondly, you're harming other people, police officers, private citizens who just want to live their life and feed their families. So I'm encouraging criminals, because there's only one route. This thing goes straight to jail. That's it. Once the blue lights come on, you're going to jail. Whether it be immediately or down the road, you're going to jail. And I may choose a different course in what that down the road looks like. It may look like, posting pictures for misdemeanor crimes on TV and those type of things. But I'm not saying that, that we should condone any type of criminal behavior or exciting any riot in any way, shape, or form.
Councilman, one of the things that was in one of your comments that wasn't as widely reported was the part about being concerned about Clinton having a wider police force, I believe you said, and there is this kind of undercurrent of a race question as far as chasing people into Jackson. I mean, that's happened a couple times, although a white woman was killed from a chase that didn't even involve Jackson a couple years ago. But still, I mean, you made those remarks, and that was within the Ferguson comment. So, I mean, talk a little bit more about that. Is there a concern that even if it's not about race, that the perception could be that it is? And, just talk a little bit more about that.
Well, Mississippi, and I made this comment as well, Mississippi still has some oppressive policies and practices and procedures that take place every day. And we must rise above our slave state history and move forward to a way where we can govern each other in a culturally sensitive way. We must govern in a way that shows, if it's a small issue, don't exasperate if you're a police officer. How you deal with something, you can make the situation worse. And how you, if there's a difference between how you deal with this race of person versus this race of person, that's an issue. It should be equal across the board, how you deal with private citizens when it comes to law enforcement or even government. There should be no difference between how a criminal of either race is being processed through the governance.
Councilman Stamps, I was not at the conference on Friday, so if I didn't listen to this, right, please tell me. But I think right before you made the Ferguson comments, you had talked about, economically not supporting Clinton. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about what you meant when you said that? And I think that, you were saying you want this culture to change and you want it to change quickly, so this is what we need to do so it doesn't turn out like Ferguson.
Well, the conversation about change has been asked for years. How do you get change quickly? It's through money and votes. That changes things quickly. And, that's how you change it. I mean, it's a simple way. You change things wisely using your dollars and wisely using your votes. And people listen. Because obviously people are not listening when it comes to practices and changing those practices when you have the tragic loss of life. They said they will continue to do the practices immediately after the death. And that's what I'm talking about the disregard. The pain, the family is in mourning, and you have the leaders of the city say, we're going to keep doing it. What does it do to you as a I know it doesn't mean if it was my sister or my son. Right? That's what leads to that frustration, is that instant disregard to we are in mourning. Here is my pain.
Do you feel like that the polarization of this issue, everyone's so angry about it on both sides, do you feel like there's a way to diffuse that some? So should this happen again, which is very possible given that police chases are still legal, so that we don't have this conversation in such a heated manner every time? Is there a way to get past this?
That's why I brought the point up about there are other states who have produced global cities. If Louisiana can figure it out and produce a New Orleans, if Alabama can produce a Birmingham, if Tennessee can produce Memphis and a Nashville, right? Mississippi can come together to produce a culture that folks want to come be a part of, that folks want to come travel and experience. But if we continue to perpetuate the painful culture of our past, people will never want to come here to the degree they should. And we can get beyond this. And that's why I want to use the light of the future to get the energy level up enough to get good white folks and good black folks, because I'm not saying all white folks are bad, and I'm saying all black folks ain't good. I'm saying that there's enough good folks on both sides of the fence, Democrat, Republican, white, black, man, woman, to say, you know what, how can we move our state forward beyond our history to display who we really are? And we're Mississippians are good folks. We just get pulled by the fringes of all these conversations, the lefts and the rights. What about the mighty middle? The people who get pulled backwards and forwards because of some of our constituency groups.
Councilman, I wonder if you would, in your capacity as a city council person, what can you do in this situation, really? Getting back to the heart of what really happened as a council person, what can we do?
Our ability is very limited as a council person. I'm not the mayor, I'm not the other mayor, I'm not the police chief. All I can do is raise awareness to where I feel we should go in the direction I feel we should be going in, and hopefully enough people of good hearts and minds can come together and say, there's a better direction, a better course of action we can take to bring us all forward. Because at the end of the day, we just want to, build some businesses, educate our children, and provide a better future. Black and white. But there's a way beyond this. But when we get to our low-level conversations, we get attached to our anchors and our pain of the past, and we're stuck. Trying to go forward, but holding on to our anchors because that's our default. Let me hold on to my pain of my grandparents and my great-grandparents, or let me hold on to this other issue that's in our past. And at some point, we have to decide that we're going to build a better society for our grandchildren to live in. We will not be stuck in 1954.
So realistically, then, your role is somewhat limited in terms of how you solve this.
Very. You know, I'm working with the administration to help upgrade our policies, because there's some ways that we can be better as well. And I'm just calling on other governments to, let's talk, let's work this out, because there's a better path that we can take. Yes, sir.
Looking back on it, would you make a different comparison, or do you still feel that it's somewhat appropriate?
There's a family that's in mourning, and the family's pain is not being pushed to the forefront. There's a community that's in mourning. There's a community that's being crying out for this activity to stop for a long time. And it's not being addressed. And people are saying, what about my pain? Let me read this again. The course of the chase. Highway 80, South Drive, across West Haven Boulevard, Robinson Road, Dixon Road, Wainwright, Williams, Galvez, Swanee, Redwood, Mount Vernon, Thomas Catchings, Alabama Street, Capitol Street, Denver Street, Claiborne Avenue, Lattimore, Houston, back to Capitol Street. It wasn't like it just came down I-20 and went up 220 and got on Capitol Street. This was a weaving through neighborhoods in the wee hours of the morning, abandoning their place of duty. You see, and that small piece has been lost in the conversation as well of the route and course that this has taken, or this took in this pursuit. And this is symptomatic. This happens a lot. This is just one issue. This happens a lot.
In terms of legalities, do you think there's a need to go to the state legislature to get some laws enacted to prevent these jurisdictional chases?
I would hope that local governments can come together and govern together in a way that's sensible and amenable to local governments, because we're the ones that the people see and touch. They knock on our doors. I would believe that we shouldn't shirk our responsibility as local elected officials to be able to deal with a local issue.
You've been asking for that for a while now, so is Councilman Stokes, but do you think there's going to be a need to go above and?
But I don't know the quality of that work product. Because if you're the state, you're doing other things. But local folks should be able to say, okay, coming down Highway 80, this is what we're going to do. Coming up 49 or Lincoln Drive or State Street, this is how we're going to conduct ourselves. So I believe that we got enough good folks. And since in my limited capacity, I'm just calling on the residents of the Madison, Rankin, and other parts of Hines County to call on your elected officials and say, hey, what can we do to make common sense make sense? Because it's not just a white-black issue. I think Pearl and Florence had an issue a couple months ago, a jurisdictional police chase issue. This is not just an inter-Jackson issue. This is a multi-jurisdictional issue that we must find a way to govern in a more effective and prudent way.
Recently, Jackson Police Department reached a major milestone when they were certified, or I guess I'm sorry, accredited, that's the word I'm looking for. I know that they have, accredited departments have a pursued policy suggestion that most of them go by. And I know JPD still holds to the lesser pursued policy that they have. Do you feel like somewhere in those guidelines that are put out by the accreditation board, there's some middle ground?
Yes, there's definitely middle ground in the whole conversation. There are other means to do this. We have a public access channel. We can open up room there to run every week. These are the folks we're looking for these specific crimes. If you have any information, call. There's social media. There's a myriad of ways to communicate and allow for community policing. In most of these cases, misdemeanor cases, when you offer a $100 reward, one of their cousins will call and say, here he is. But I don't want for people to be at risk. I don't want cities to be abandoned by their police forces in the middle of the night when they think they're home safe. They're not, because the police force is gone chasing a misdemeanor.
Councilman, if we flip the coin a little bit, if these other municipalities say, look, we're going to continue chasing into Jackson, should JPD, in your opinion, change their policy and chase into other counties?
No. Why would I do that? Why would I condone the activity that I'm pushing against here? What I'm saying is that we should work harder to be better in every regard. Because I don't want to put our city, I know what police chases do. The city of Jackson has an economic issue right now. if I laid on top of it lawyer fees and settlements and all this kind of stuff that already strain a weak budget, then what would happen? I'm not gonna raise my taxes to pay for a lawsuit.
And to be clear, those are questions that have been posed to me as we interview
Oh,
people
absolutely.
throughout in the neighborhood.
You know, one of the things that strikes me reading about all this is that there seems to be just a real dearth of information among the public about the dangers of police chase. You know, like there's this idea that if you don't chase them, they get away. And I know you kind of addressed this, but there is actually a lot of information out there. So what my question here is, what do you need from people in this room to help get that kind of information out? Because the public
Well,
keeps asking for chase them as soon as they run out of Walmart with a CD or something, then
Right.
it's gonna keep happening, and it endangers the cops' lives too. So what do you need from us?
Well, if the media would help us out, let's reserve some PSA time once a week to run some public information pieces about these are the criminals we're looking for on each channel, on each paper. Reserve a monthly spot to say, hey, you know, these are the folks who've done X, Y, and Z. If you see them, call this number and help us police better.
Well, and then also on the subject of police chases, you know,
Well, in this, the good folks in this room, we're just asking for a call to action for other constituency groups from other cities and our city. To say, hey, you know what, there's a better way to do this. I'm asking for good folks, white and black, because there are way more. Sometimes we allow for the smaller fractions of our community to pull us in the wrong directions. There are good folks out there who want good government. And so it's time for us to not do what the national government is doing, and be so inflammatory and divisive, and be what makes common sense.
What would you say to possibly institute penalties to people, for people who do run for police, especially on misdemeanors? Because like the guy in this chase was in on another chase a few months ago, he was a passenger. And it appears that some of them know that if they run and get away, that they can do it.
Well, it's difficult in this case is he went from shoplifting to attempted murder, a murder charge. So you don't get too much stiffer penalty than a murder charge. You know, he could have been serving a small amount of time, paying his debt to society and move forward, but now the murder charge, it's a different conversation.
So if you were the mayor or chief of police, you all reached out to any of the surrounding cities or chief of police, mayors, and heard back from them?
I'm of the opinion, I let the mayor be the mayor, let the chief be the chief. They've been having those attempts of conversations for some time. This is not a new conversation. And so I'll be willing to help out what I can as a legislator to rewrite ordinances or change the governance policies of the city of Jackson to something that's better. I will always submit to a better idea. So if someone in Clinton or Raymond or something can look at something we're doing and there's a policy that needs to be amended for, I will, if it makes sense and it's good government, that's what I'm here for.
To your knowledge, of those conversations yielded anything?
I haven't seen a policy change.
It sounds like you're just really hoping that this tragedy is gonna kind of open the doors for some discussion.
Right. We need to make, it has to be followed with action because the people are tired of discussions. The people want to see actions. They want to see, this will be our policy, this will be your policy, this is how, they want good government. Really, the people believe that the best government is the government they never hear from. That they can just go on with their life and raise their family and their water cuts on and their street is paid. The best government to the people is a government they never hear from. You know, so that's what I'm aspiring to produce for the people of the metro areas. Can we have a government that we never hear from? That we're just allowed to go do our thing and live our life and the systems of government flow and I can trust it and it can be bedrock and I can just go and live my life. But I'm always tuned to the news to see what's going on. That's not where I want to be, in a state of hypervigilance. And that adds to some of the pain of being in a hypervigilant state of your own government.
Earlier, I heard you add or heard you comment to the media about changing their policy or making space for PSAs. What is your position on making space for PSAs that are crime prevention PSAs as opposed to crime searching?
I'm all for that, Brother McConnell. I'm all for that. You know, that's another great suggestion right from the community right here. So if the networks and media outlets would make space for, you know, public service announcements that prevent crime, that educate people on processes that they can. Let's have that dialogue but also a commitment, not just to talk about it, but to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody from the community got a question? For me, I have to talk to the media when they release me, but anybody got a question for me? Okay. All right, well, thanks a lot and have a happy Easter. And I love y'all. See you next time.